What is going on, people? TripleM back again with another video, and today I would like to talk about Manchester United's triumphant 3-1 win over the Toffees yesterday evening at Old Trafford, and what a magnificent result it was. But in all truth, the performance was not particularly great, and in all fairness to Everton, that was their best performance of the season, and it would be a sad way for Frank Lampard to go out after putting in a performance like that despite losing the game, because honestly, if it weren't for that disallowed goal, we could be sat here talking about how Manchester United have to play an additional FA Cup game and a replay against Everton away from home. But if buts and maybes don't really count, and we're not here to talk about Frank Lampard or Everton, we're here to talk about Manchester United. So let's talk about Marcus Rashford, because I think this is a good place to start. According to SofaScore, he created 2 big chances. He played 3 key passes yesterday evening. He had 100% accuracy in terms of his long balls, so he attempted 3 long balls and played 3 successful long balls. And on top of that, to put the cherry on the proverbial cake, to put the icing on top of the cake, he actually got a goal and an assist. And on top of that, he was electric. He was confident. He was taking people on. He was nutmegging people. He was winning fouls in very key positions for Manchester United. And he had a very active game. And Marcus Rashford, in this vein of form, looks very scary. And you know how I know Marcus Rashford's playing well? There were moments yesterday where he had at least 4 passing options and he decided to run himself into a blind alley. And I wasn't mad, because I was like, it'll come off eventually. And that's how I know he's playing well. When I feel like he's exempt from criticism when it comes to being selfish, because our other forwards aren't really contributing in terms of goals at the moment. So he is allowed to be selfish. And until others start pulling their weight and contributing, I don't mind him going for the extra shot and trying to take a man on, because that's what we need. Now, moving on to the other side of the field, Anthony, who I thought had a relatively good game. Now, there were moments in the game that were very frustrating. There were moments in the game where I thought to myself, man, this guy is not the finished article. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all, because Anthony, I think a lot of people are starting to learn that he's an extremely one-footed player. This is something that was said about him at Ajax. If you read scout reports, if you dived into his analytics and his statistics, and you actually did your research before he came to Manchester United, or alternatively, you just watch the Eredivisie and you watch Ajax, which most of us don't, you would know that he's a particularly one-footed player, and a lot of his talent and a lot of the praise he got was because of his raw ability. He's not the finished article yet, and I think we're seeing that. Yes, he scored a goal. Yes, he had some bright moments here and there in terms of the skill and putting on a good show for the crowd, but there's still a lot missing. There's still a lot to be desired. There's moments where he couldn't even play a simple 5-yard pass into the box because his body shape wasn't right. So instead of hitting it with his right foot, he's trying to hit it with the outside of his left foot, and it's just very awkward. And that's something you don't want in football. That's something that, as a footballer, you need to work on. I don't really understand how professional footballers who get paid millions, millionaires, by the way, can't train their weaker foot. I've never really understood that phenomenon. I just don't get it, but maybe I'm being too harsh. Anthony, he scored a goal. I still love him. There's a lot of positive things about this player. The fact that he's willing to take a man on, the fact that he exudes confidence and he exudes everything that you want in a Manchester United player in terms of the way he carries himself, in terms of his body language. And on top of that, he's pretty fun to watch. Yes, he's frustrating, but when it comes off, oh, it's beautiful to watch. Anyways, let's talk about Anthony Martial, because he's another player who got a lot of flack yesterday. And according to SofaScore, he was the worst amongst our front 3, which I think is fair. But how bad was Martial really? Because yesterday's goal involvement for me suggests that he wasn't actually that bad at all. He receives the ball from deep, right? And there's 3 Everton players. In the screenshot right here on screen, there's 3 Everton players around him. There's 2 behind him with his back on his back while he has his back to goal. And there's Onana who's charging in. He then gets past Onana, but he gets pressured by, I believe it's Cody, and he manages to wiggle Cody off, and he plays a really good pass into Rashford in the final frame here. I think that demonstrates everything about Martial that is positive, and everything about Martial that is still good. Even when he's not scoring goals, even when he's not looking particularly sharp, his hold-up is so underrated. To take off 3 players, to bob and weave through traffic, like high traffic areas, like it's nothing, and then spray a nice line-breaking pass to your teammate. It's an underrated quality, and I'm not saying that that excuses his finishing or that suddenly makes it okay that the other elements of his game are not polished. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that some people over-focus on the negative sides of his game and don't give him credit on the positive sides of his game. I've even heard people say, what does Anthony Martial actually do? And I suppose people watch football in a different way. When I watch football, because I like to analyze games, I tend to pay a lot of attention to the players off the ball. And even when I'm ball watching, I will remind myself, I'll literally have a conversation with myself in my head and say, hey man, look off the ball. Notice the patterns. Why is this player running this way? Why is this player doing this? Why is this player doing that? I'm fascinated by that. But other people, I guess, don't really watch football in that way, so they don't pick up on the subtle nuances like Martial's hold-up play. It's something that can't be quantified by stats or metrics unless you have access to like really deep, stat websites out there, which some of us don't. It's not quantified by many metrics out there. So you can't see it unless you actually pay attention and you intentionally try focus on what happens off the ball. Try focus on what movements, what runs he's making. It's easier to do if you actually go to Old Trafford and watch the game. On the telly, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard. I'm not going to lie. Anyways, let's talk about David De Gea, because I think he was another big talking point in yesterday's game, and a very negative talking point at that because of his mistake for the first goal. Now, the initial mistake, I believe, might be from Casemiro or Christian Eriksen. Then Varane doesn't stop the cross in. Then De Gea has an absolute brain fart moment where basically his brain switches off and the ball goes through his legs and he completely checks out mentally. And that was an abysmal goal to concede. But I think David De Gea has improved a lot this season. The question is, has he improved enough to stay at Manchester United? I'm not convinced, but there has been improvement. There has been elements of his distribution that have improved. There's been elements of his ability to come out and command across that have improved. We just didn't see it yesterday. Yesterday, we saw a relapse. Yesterday, we saw David De Gea go back into his shell. I think to a certain extent, our game before Everton, I can't remember who it was. I believe, was it Forest? No, it wasn't Nottingham Forest. The team we played before Everton, we saw shades of the old David De Gea again as well there. And I think he's falling back into bad habits. So the consistency is not there in terms of commanding his area, in terms of his distribution, and in terms of being the type of keeper that would fit the Erik ten Hag system. But overall this season, ignoring the last two games, I think there has been genuine improvements. And I think we've seen that David De Gea, even in his old age, is capable of doing some of these things at a competent level. The question is, does Erik ten Hag want competent or does Erik ten Hag want excellent? And I think Erik ten Hag wants excellent. So I think the jury is still out on David De Gea. But apart from him, there's not really much else to talk about. I thought when Casemiro went off the field, the chaos started. Chaos ensued. We were not able to string any passes together. We became a lot more sloppy. Everton grew more and more into the game and grew more and more in terms of confidence. And it looked really scary towards the end there, man. If it wasn't for Rashford's goal to put the final nail in the proverbial coffin, I don't think that game is a smooth sailing towards the end. I think Everton continue to push and they eventually barrel down that door. But again, if buts and maybes don't really count, Manchester United won the game. And look, I'm actually happy as a Manchester United fan for the first time in a very, very long time. I remember when we hired Mourinho, I was excited because I genuinely was deluded enough to believe that we win the title. But that completely faded away once I saw our style of play and just some of the issues with the team. LVG wasn't really that excited. Moyes wasn't really that bothered. But Ten Hag, for the first time, I genuinely feel excited to watch Manchester United play. I genuinely feel confident that against mid-table teams, we're going to go there and we're going to boss them. And we're going to actually play like a big club. Against bigger teams, even if we might lose, we're going to play some good football and there's going to be structure. And if things go wrong in the first half, there's going to be changes. People are going to get hooked. People are not going to continue to start regardless of form and regardless of circumstance just because of their name and just because of how much they cost. Erik ten Hag has brought that back to Manchester United and I love it. I'm loving every second of it. And this is only the beginning. This is only the first 6 months. Imagine where we will be in the next 3 years. Anyways, it's been your boy TripleM. Leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. And as usual, don't forget to leave a comment. Peace.